more of a safety risk. But let me play this video here. This was produced by Armand Aviram, and you'll see David Sirota in here. This is from The Lever. This is a great video breaking down the policy failures that very likely led to what happened in East Palestine.
We just saw in the middle of the country a giant chemical fireball, 100.
Sorry guys, let me turn off the music real quick, just so we can really take this in. Okay.
What happened in East Palestine?
We just saw in the middle of the country a giant chemical fireball, 100-foot flames, and very few people asking questions about what led up to this. So there was a derailment in 2012 in New Jersey,
releasing 20,000 gallons of dangerous chemicals and noxious gas.
You see this shit right here? This shit pisses me the fuck off, dude. Because these companies can clearly just invest a little more money into their fucking infrastructure, into better brakes, into better equipment, into more modern, like, technologies, but they don't fucking do it. And they just do it, they put it back into stock buybacks, or, you know, they'll lobby politicians, they'll fucking, you know, just corrupt, just giving politicians money, and hopefully they'll do what you say. And this is what happens, man. We fucking destroy the planet. We kill animals. We destroy the water nearby. We fucking give people cancer. This is what happens. It's fucking sad.
Gas into the air.
There's children in the town that are being affected by this.
and there was pressure on regulators to do something about those kinds of trains. And so the Obama administration had a rule proposed to better regulate these trains. The National Transportation Safety Board told the regulatory agency, said, listen, these regulations should broadly cover not just oil, they should cover what's known as Class 2 chemicals. And the chemical industry lobbyists went to work pressuring the regulatory agency to limit the definition of what a high hazard flammable train is. Limit it in a way that the train in Ohio, that kind of train ended up not being classified as a high hazard flammable train.
The NTSB closely monitoring 4 cars that are filled with vinyl.
You see, because they lobbied against classifying it as a high classified chemical or whatever, they didn't do it. They labeled it as oil. No, we're just carrying oil. It's just oil. Because it will cost more money for them to have to label it as whatever it actually is than to lie about it.
Chloride, it has been found to be linked to cancer.
Trains that were subject to this rule were going to be required to use a special kind of new braking system to try to deter or at least reduce the damage from derailments.
ECP delivers the unmatched performance of air brakes with the precision of electronic communications.
Most trains in the country are still using technology from the Civil War era. But the moment the government was considering making it a...
We're using Civil War era technology. Imagine if our military was still using Civil War era technology. Do you think they would just sit around and be like, oh well, our military has Civil War era technology. Oh well, whatever, we'll just leave it there. It don't matter. No, they would advance that shit in a snap of a finger. Snap of a finger. Of course. But that's because it's a government. The military is government owned. If the military was fucking privatized and corporate owned, oh my god, dude. They would be slacking. We would like have like outdated weapons. We'll probably be using AKs and shit. You know what I mean? Like, that's what happens when you leave something up to a corporation. They cut corners to save money and then give that money to their fucking shareholders.
Mandated. The railroad industry's changed its tune. It cited cost concerns to pressure against that rule.
We want to see federal regulations when they're necessary, not just in reaction.
They're always necessary, not just when they're necessary.
Obama's rule included that measure to expand the larger use of those brakes on the nation's rail system. But in that 2016 election year, the Republican Party got about $6 million from the rail industry. And Senate Republicans started beating the drum for Trump to repeal the rule. Donald Trump repealed the brake rule so that the industry does not have to even start to use these kinds of brakes.
Look at that.
Former Federal Railroad Administration regulator told us that these brakes, which are known as ECP brakes, would have mitigated a disaster like this. And we just learned today, after the publication of our story, federal officials told us that this train did not have those brakes on the train.
Wow.
All right, so before I go even deeper into this, I just want to give credit there to The Lever. The Lever does absolutely fantastic investigative reporting.
Pisses me off.
They are breaking stories. They do far more than the vast majority of what the mainstream press does, and they're leading the charge on this story and exposing why this happened. So just essentially summarize that video there. David Sirota tweets out, chemical lobbyists got Obama officials to exempt trains like the one in Ohio from hazmat safety rules. Rail lobbyists got Trump officials to repeal rules requiring better brakes on trains. And Secretary Pete hasn't moved to fix the safety rules. So there is blame to go around here. Blame on the Obama administration, blame on the Trump administration, and blame on Biden and Pete Buttigieg for not patching what they can do with their power. They don't need Congress to change these rules. So before I get more on that, this is just another one of these companies that are absolutely disgusting. So this is an article from October 2021. Unions allege Norfolk Southern, that is the freight company that had this derailment, that their job cuts saddled engineers with other duties. So again, this is October 2021. Just a few months later, in March, here's what they did. Norfolk Southern announces new $10 billion stock repurchase program.
$10 billion. Oh my God, dude. They did a stock buyback, which is basically when you take all your profits and you throw them into your own stock to make their stock artificially inflate. $10 billion, and they couldn't invest like $1 billion into their brakes or whatever.
So $10 billion in stock buybacks to artificially inflate their own stock, just months after laying countless people off and saddling their existing employees with more duties. Again, putting even more of a strain on the system and potentially...
I want to see these CEOs work on the fucking trains. I want to see them try to put out a fucking fire. That's what I want to see.
Causing even further safety risks. It's all about as much money for the executives as possible, regardless of what impact
they can't. They don't know what the fuck to do.
This derailment is another example of that. So The Lever has a larger piece on the Pete Buttigieg inaction on this. Quote, there will be more derailments. So in the aftermath of a fiery Ohio train derailment, Secretary of Transportation Pete Buttigieg's department has not moved to reinstate an Obama-era safety rule aimed at expanding the use of better braking technology, even though a former federal safety official recently warned Congress that without the better brakes, quote, there will be more derailments and more releases of hazardous materials. Instead, transportation regulators have now been considering a rail industry-backed proposal that could weaken existing brake safety rules. So while this derailment's going on, they're considering actually weakening rules around braking, and the details on that here.
Wow.
There's at least one brake safety proposal currently under consideration by federal rail regulators, an industry-backed rule relaxing brake testing requirements. In 2021, in response to a petition from the Association of American Railroads, the FRA proposed amendments to existing safety standards that would reduce the frequency of brake testing on freight cars equipped with an electronic inspection tracking system.
This shit is
corporate communism. Corporate communism.
That's what this is, guys. This is literally corporate communism. It's not human communism. You know, they're not helping us. They're just helping the corporations.
Corporate communism.
Changes under consideration are staunchly opposed by 5 major rail unions.
And it makes me cry
It's not enough to already
to even
put
look at them.
the lives of countless people at risk with these derailments, the lack of safety that is in place, but
Yeah, when these corporations like destroy the environment, you know what I mean? And like you ask them to like help with the cleanup, they're like,
Call a crackhead. Call a crackhead.
"Oh, crap, kid, help you clean up the environment."
have to go even further to try and save even a few more cents, because that is how capitalism operates. Let's get to this interview with David Sirota. So
That's not what I wanted to do.
You're the Republican Party.
they're
Okay.
considering actually weakening, because that is how capitalism operates. Let's get to this interview with David Sirota. So there's a piece in this interview that I really want to share here. This goes to further exposing how disgusting this company is.
The railroad industry cited an amount, $3 billion. Putting these brakes on the trains that would be required to have them would cost a total of $3 billion. Now, that's about 2 weeks of operating revenue that the train system pulls in. 2 weeks of revenue.
Here we go.
In a single year, meaning it's a tiny amount of money when you're talking about the entire rail industry, but they didn't want to spend it. And my guess is they didn't want to spend it because they presume that their current safety systems are fine, and if their current safety systems fail, that governments, whether local, state, or federal, will pick up the tab for the cleanup, for the disaster. That cost is socialized to the public, not internalized by the private company. So they made a cost-benefit analysis that, yeah, maybe the brakes would make things safer. They're the ones who actually said these brakes would improve safety. But in their cost-benefit analysis, it still wasn't worth it for their profit interests.
Privatizing the gains and socializing the losses. This is across industries.
Yep.
This is how capitalism operates without any proper regulation in place. That's how it's meant to operate. Because why would they follow the rules? Why would they do anything if they don't have to? If it's going to save them some money? If it's going to mean a higher profit margin and more money for the shareholders? Why would they bother putting any of these
we gotta tax them, guys. We need to tax.
That's why you
and
need
regulate
regulation around these
very much
industries.
regulate
Otherwise, this keeps
these
happening.
corporations.
Man, the amount of lobbying, the amount of corporate greed, the amount of just absolute corruption at the heart of policymaking is showcased in this single story. Now, a couple last things here. So there's, of course, some pushback in defense of Pete Buttigieg because people are crazy. So Patrick here in this quote tweet says, Congress reinstates laws. Cabinet members can only enforce existing laws. They are law enforcers, not lawmakers. Ignoring the fact that the Trump administration, without Congress, changed the rule from the Obama administration around the braking. David Sirota here replies saying, Pete Buttigieg is the transportation secretary. The transportation secretary has safety rule-making authority. This kind of excuse is pathetic, inaccurate, and yet sadly common among those who think their job after a chemical explosion is to defend a cabinet secretary. It's very important to be objective when looking at a story like this. Yes, of course, you can see the direct connection between the Trump administration and the lack of safety.
Generally speaking,
braking,
Chinese people
Civil
look
War era
Chinese.
braking still on trains, to me, it's comically insane. Yes, you can make that direct connection. You can also make the connection to the Obama administration, and then also make the connect about the rules around chemicals and how the lobbying around that ensured that there would be no extra protections for those class 2 chemicals that could cause an explosion like this or this deadly impact. But there's also
that is my own sperm.
The current administration that has the power to do something now and haven't. Like, when I first read this connection, my immediate thought is, why, as the Biden administration, why don't you come in and immediately look at what Trump did
Yeah, for real.
and what you can undo, what makes sense to undo.
For real.
Maybe he did some things that made sense, but why not look at what he did and see, hey, we can change this back when it comes to certain rules around climate protections. He reversed a bunch of stuff just unilaterally because he could with his power. Why not look at all of those, reverse all of those back, look at rules like this, reverse this back. You think this is the first thing you would do when coming in? If you really are concerned about the impact that Trump had, as you claim to while you were running for president, why wouldn't this be the first thing you do, is look at what Trump did and reverse what he did?
That is my own
to defend not doing that, to defend the inaction here,
That is
just
some
to me
really
is
sick stuff.
insane. You have to look at these stories objectively. You can't just look at one side and just blanketly criticize one side without looking at what can be done now. Last thing here, as there is more information coming out around the chemicals that were released. This is
the beginning of the rise of the Antichrist.
A local news report here. Let me share a bit of this.
We now know 3 more chemicals that were on board the Norfolk Southern train that derailed here in East Palestine just over a week ago. And we're being told that some of those chemicals are dangerous.
We basically nuked a town with chemicals so we could get a railroad open.
The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency sent a letter to Norfolk Southern stating that ethylene glycol monobutyl
So let me explain something to you.
Ethylexyl-acrylate and isobutylene were also in the rail cars that were derailed, breached, or on fire. Caggiano says ethylexyl-acrylate is especially worrisome. He says it's a carcinogen, and contact with it can cause burning and irritation in the skin and eyes. Breathing it in can irritate the nose, throat, and cause coughing and shortness of breath. Isobutylene is also known to cause dizziness and drowsiness when inhaled.
I was kind of surprised that when they quickly told the people they can go back home, but then said if they feel like they want their homes tested, they can have them tested. I would have far rather they did all the testing.
Caggiano says it's possible some of these chemicals could still be present in homes and on objects until you clean them thoroughly.
So there's a lot of what ifs, and we're going to be looking at this thing 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the line and wondering, gee, cancer clusters could pop up, well water could go bad.
Caggiano recommends anyone who's in the East Palestine area get a health checkup. He says get a record now of where your health stands so that moving forward you'll have documentation of any possibly related effects to the train derailment.
That is so fucked up.
In East Palestine, Jennifer Rodriguez, WKBN 27 First News.
That last piece of advice I think is fantastic. If you are in the area, absolutely get a health checkup. Ensure there is a record of where your health is now. That way, if there is any impact of these chemicals on your health going into the future, you have that record of it. The only thing this piece misses, and this is local news generally, is the actual connecting to a failure in policy and who to blame in terms of administrations, in terms of these companies and their lack of safety around it, their total lack of consideration for actual people. All local news, unfortunately, lacks that extra step. But this is why it's important to support places like The Lever and ensure reporting like this, investigative reporting like this, continues, and that there is someone holding these companies and these administrations accountable. So this also goes to, I have a hard time imagining that anything will actually get done here, that Pete Buttigieg and the Biden administration will actually move to enact any of these rules.
Yeah, I
unless
hope they
there
do
is some
something,
real
man,
pressure put in place by mainstream media outlets. So occasionally you have a story like
this is really fucking scary, because if you think about this, like,
So let me explain something to you.
This has been happening for a really, this happens all the time. Like, I think 2 to 4 trains derail every day, I think. Right? And the only reason why this is getting a lot of coverage now is because this one was really bad. And it's so blatant, the corruption that these companies are doing, right? Because, they're basically... This company had, 2 million workers. They cut it down to 200,000. So now they have less workers, right? They're trying to load the trains up with as many cars as possible, so that they can make as much money, right? So it's a super heavy loaded train. There's 2 dudes on it, right? They get I heard they get 19 seconds to inspect the whole train. It used to be 3 minutes or something like that. Don't quote me, but it's like not a long time to check everything. So they're making a ton of profit. But think of all those downsides. Because they have less people, super loaded train, super unsafe, it's heavy. They don't get a lot of time to inspect, all for more money. They don't pay the people more. The people gotta work more, get paid like the same amount or less. But the corporation makes more money. And stuff like this fucking happens. And now the town needs to clean up all the chemicals. Our taxpayer money needs to go to clean that shit up, right? The corporation gave every person in the town $5. There's 5,000 people in the town. That's $25,000. That's nothing. $5 per person. They need to sue the shit out of that company. And they need to regulate it and make them force them to upgrade their brakes, because that's fucking ridiculous. We should not be using technology from the fucking Civil War. All right? That's really fucked up.
So let me explain something to you. So let me explain something to you.
If I was the president, I would have corporate police. I would have police that monitor corporations and rich fucks.
So let me explain something to you.
That's what I would do, and that's how you solve this problem, God damn it. All right, let's move on to the next topic.